Every storyteller eventually hits a wall. You've got a scene you need to write, but it feels impossible. Maybe a feeling you need to show is just too intense, or maybe it's a little too risky. But what if that wall isn't a wall at all? What if it's actually a doorway to something way more powerful? Okay, let's dive in and see how one writer turned a huge storytelling problem into a scene that's absolutely unforgettable.
And that really brings us to the core question here. How do you actually write about desire? I mean, that intense, overwhelming, all-consuming feeling, especially when your characters are young. How do you capture all that fire without, getting burned by showing way too much? It's got to be one of the trickiest tightrope walks in all of fiction.
So here's how we're going to break down this creative journey. We'll start with the initial challenge the writer was facing. Then we'll look at the big pivot from an explicit idea to a symbolic one. We'll analyze that reimagined dream scene, see how it totally changed the character's path, and finally, we'll talk about the big lesson here, the incredible power of suggestion.
All right, so let's set the scene. Our main guy is Jaru. He's a young warrior, and the writer's goals sound simple, but it's really, really tough. They need to show that he's so completely consumed by his feelings for a young woman, Peppy, that this longing is literally invading his dreams. It's affecting him on a deep, almost physical level.
Now, the first draft idea was pretty direct. The plan was for Jaru to have a dream where Peppy essentially seduces him, asking him to take her innocence, and the scene was supposed to end with Jaru waking up, well, very physically aware of his dream. The whole focus was on the body's raw, unfiltered reaction to desire. But then, bam, the writer hits that wall I was talking about. A huge creative constraint just changes everything, and it's this. The characters, Jaru and Peppy, are minors. That meant any explicit content, any graphic descriptions of arousal, any of that loss of innocence stuff, it was all completely off the table. The original idea just wasn't going to fly, period. And this, right here, is where the magic happens. This limitation sparked some real creativity. It forced a pivot, so instead of focusing on the physical, the writer shifted to the psychological. The goal was no longer about showing a physical act. It was about exploring emotional longing, building sensual tension, and using powerful symbolic language. What could have been a total dead end became an opportunity to create something with so much more depth. Okay, so let's pop the hood on this new version and see exactly how the writer builds all this tension. The reimagined dream is a masterclass in subtext and symbolism. It shows you how to build insane levels of intensity without ever needing to spell things out. It's all about what the characters are feeling, not just what they're doing.
What's so cool is how the atmosphere gets built piece by piece. You got the setting, right? A dim, intimate chamber, incense burning. Then you have these visuals, like the moonfire in Peppy's eyes. And the sensations. They're sensual, but they're not sexual. The warmth of breath on a cheek, a touch that's described as reverent. It's all about creating this powerful, almost sacred intimacy. And then the dialogue just takes it to a whole other level. This isn't just about a crush. Peppy's question immediately grounds this whole dream in their shared history, in their emotional conflict. It tells us there's a real, complicated story between them, full of tension and things left unsaid. It's about their connection, not just some teenage fantasy. And this line, this is the emotional heart of the entire dream. Peppy isn't asking for sex. She's pleading for emotional connection, for acceptance. Choose me. Wow. That's a longing that goes so much deeper than just physical desire, and it makes Jaru's inner turmoil so much more real and compelling for us as readers. And just as that intimacy hits its absolute peak, the dream doesn't just fade away. It shatters. The imagery here is just perfect. The dream cracks like breaking glass. It's sudden, it's violent, and it perfectly mirrors what's going on inside Jaru. His frustration, his confusion, the forbidden nature of what he's feeling. It's brilliant. So what's the result of taking this symbolic route? Well, you get a much, much richer story. The aftermath of the dream isn't just about Jaru dealing with a physical reaction. Nope, it's about him confronting this profound emotional crisis that's become so powerful, other people can actually see it. Enter Jaru's grandfather. He's this wise old warrior, and the next morning during training, he sees right through Jaru. He doesn't see some teenage boy who had a wet dream. He sees a warrior whose spirit, whose very essence is fractured.
And that kind of observation is only possible because the dream was about emotional chaos, not just physical release.
And the grandfather's wisdom, it's baked into his culture. He uses this Arreqqanarra phrase, "Lanava karin la kiva sa," which basically means, your body does not lie to me. For them, physical signs, a stumble, a shaky breath, they're like windows straight into your soul. It's such a great way to connect Jaru's inner turmoil to his outer world. So to help Jaru, his grandfather gives him this amazing metaphor. First, he acknowledges the passion. He says, hey, your blood is fire, your heart is young. I get it. Next, he offers the solution, water. When the flame rages, you have to answer it with water, with discipline and clarity. And then, and this is the key, he reframes the whole problem. The real enemy isn't desire, it's confusion.
This whole creative process brings us to one incredibly powerful lesson about telling stories. By choosing suggestion over statement, by choosing symbolism over explicit detail, the writer created a story that wasn't just safer to tell, it was way deeper and way more impactful.
And that line from the grandfather, that's really the thesis of this whole explainer. The story got so much better when it stopped being about Jaru's desire for Pepi and started being about his confusion. His split spirit, his conflicting duties, his overwhelming love. I mean, come on, that's a much more interesting conflict to explore.
So what are the big takeaways for us? First, constraints can actually be your best friend. They force you to get creative. Second, symbolism is almost always more powerful than just spelling things out. And when you focus on that internal emotional turmoil, you get way deeper characters. And finally, using subtext invites your audience in. It lets them participate in building the meaning of the story.
And that kind of leaves us with one final thought. By holding back, the writer actually gives us, the audience, the space to feel the intensity of Jaru's longing for ourselves. It proves that sometimes the most powerful moments in any story aren't the ones we're shown, but the ones we're allowed to imagine.